Hello and welcome to the EduTalk series hosted by Biotone EduPartner School Program, and massage industry experts. With the growing interest and popularity of the EduTalk series, Biotone continues to support virtual learning and building massage community by connecting you with industry experts who share their knowledge and expertise on topics not only for class discussion, but career success. Today's expert is Tanya Rodriguez, a multifaceted educator with 20 years of teaching multi-modality massage. Tanya is nationally recognized NCBTMB continuing education instructor with classes ranging from implicit bias training for allied health professionals to developing, creating, and implementing enforcement and community members. Tanya is a former commission chair serving with the Asheville, North Carolina Human Asheville, North Carolina Human Relations Commission and vocal advocate for collective liberation. Let's listen and learn as Tanya discusses implicit bias training, addressing the vast diversity of classification and how to approach clients and patients with cultural awareness and when aware of it to operate from long-held bias that unconsciously creates harmful events in a healing environment. So a lot to get to this evening. Thank you for joining us. Again, please have your video off and sound muted, and feel free to chat comments and questions to Tanya, which she will answer at the end of her presentation tonight. Thank you so much, Tanya, for joining us. I am going to close out my video and sound, and I will come back when we're time for chats. Thank you.
Thank you, Donnell. Thank you, Biotone. And thank you, everyone, for being here. It's a pleasure. It's an honor. And I'm glad for all of you to show up and your interest in exploring a little bit deeper about what this implicit bias training is for allied health therapists. How does it help our industry? What impact does it have on our clients, in our workplaces, in ourselves? So today we're going to explore a few of those things. Before we begin, my name is Tanya Rodriguez. I studied massage in Queensland, Australia. In 2002, what's called a remedial massage therapist. Graduated with just under 1,500 hours from massage school in Australia. Came back to the States. As we know, if somebody studies out of the country, you have to go back to school when you come back to the States. I did another 500 hours. So all up, I have 2,000 hours of massage school training from 2 massage schools, one in 2002 and one in 2005, Space Coast Health Institute in Melbourne, Florida. I started teaching massage in 2004 and I haven't stopped since. Started teaching champissage, which is Indian head massage in hair salons in Richmond, Virginia in 2003. And then as I progressed, I started to evolve my massage workshops and bring in different elements of massage, and finally culminated into finding my passion in massage, which is teaching implicit bias to massage therapists. I've taught in Everest College from 2013 to 2015, when Everest College was shut down, and that was in West Los Angeles. And I was teaching in all the different Everest colleges around Los Angeles County. And that was just an absolute eye-opening experience. When I moved to North Carolina in 2015, the massage schools here did not look like the massage schools in California. And the pushback that I received as a teacher really opened my eyes to something that was very different about teaching massage and the massage industry here. Um, so I've been around for a long time. I've massaged in 2 different countries. Um, let's see, 4 different states. And so now I'm here. And I'm really, really excited to bring this topic with you. Today I did a live class. I not only teach implicit bias for allied health professionals, I also teach implicit bias as a general class, and I also co-created a implicit bias class for law enforcement officers in 2021. And that is where this class for allied health professionals was born from. And when Michigan decided to make implicit bias a requirement, I jumped on it and used this class as a pilot to check out to see if the concepts that we created for the implicit bias class for law enforcement officers would work with massage therapists. And surprise, it did. And not only did it work with massage therapists loved it because bringing in my massage educator experience, we bring this subject matter out of the cognitive and into the somatic. And so we really combine mind body teaching when it comes to this implicit bias course. As you know, or may not know, the subject of implicit bias can be really, really, really heavy. And a lot of emotions come up. And if a person isn't really equipped to handle those emotions in the room, the instructor could possibly get triggered themselves. Today is a really good example of that. I'll share a little bit about what happened. Um, there was a point where we were discussing microaggressions, and in a room, remember, I'm in North Carolina, and not only am I in North Carolina, I'm in the mountains of North Carolina. I'm in Western North Carolina, so it's not very diverse, and it's diverse in very different ways. It's not racially diverse. And so in my room today, there was 30 people, and out of 30 people, there were 4 people of color. That 4 was including myself. And so when we had begun to talk about microaggressions, 2 people of color, boop, left the room. They were out because it was just so much. And one started crying. Uh, she started crying because she shared that one of the things that she experiences that's a microaggression, especially because she's from the town that I was teaching the class in today, is the question, where are you from? And where are you from is such an innocent question. It's a question that's based in, I want to connect with you, or I want to know you better. I want to get to know all of who you are. In that, though, it also is an implication that that person may not necessarily belong. And so after hearing that time and time again, it kind of wore on her. And so today she was able to be heard, able to share her depth of experience with that one phrase, and was able to unpack it in the space. The amount of healing that happened after that was profound. So a part of this work is really opening up a space for people to heal in profound ways. As massage therapists, that's our job, is to open up a space for people to heal in profound ways. Whether it's to um, touch a body, whether it's to just hold the hands on the body, Reiki, and energy work, deep tissue therapy, Feldenkrais, uh, whatever modality of massage, even educators of massage, how what you bring into the room can either has the capacity to heal or has the capacity to harm. And so when we bring in the subject of implicit bias, we open up the opportunity to have the self-awareness of the people in the room and the educators' capacity to impact within the space of healing or impact within the space of harm. But what happens if somebody doesn't have the self-awareness that they're actually harming? Like in asking a question, where are you from? Right? It's really innocent. It's like, where are you from? No, where are you really from? No, where are you from? No, where are you from though? And I hope a few of you either laughed, giggled, or went, huh? Because those things can chip away, chip away, chip away, chip away, and has an impact. And so seeing the rooms of healing, I call them, within the topic of implicit bias is uh, is a lot of, I dare I say, blessings, because I get to be a part of the collective healing of humanity with these teachings. Oftentimes, and one of the things that the woman had said to me today after class, she said, "You're the only one that nobody's walked out of the room at this with this topic." And apparently they've had lots of implicit bias instructors, and people have walked out of the room, people have pushed back, people have said, "I'm not racist," and got really, really mad and jumped up and walked out of the room, and that was that. And today we didn't have any of that. Everybody sat there, everybody was interested, everybody was asking questions, everybody was involved. It's an interactive space. The way that implicit bias training is often taught is through a lens of guilt. And that guilt can impact people in ways that has the capacity to harm. And in an implicit bias curriculum that I've created, one of the things that we encourage is not to self-guilt, is to be self-aware. And what does that look like? And so we explore that level of self-awareness through a lens of healing so that we can bring in a greater self-awareness. And when people have a greater self-awareness, it brings in a deeper level of compassion for the teachings that people have experienced throughout their life. And so one of the things that we teach with implicit bias is that implicit bias isn't something that just people come up with. It's a learned behavior. And the impact of not questioning that implicit bias can have large consequences, especially with people who are on our tables or in our classrooms. If one is not aware of the implicit bias that they carry towards specific students, then whether that be class related, whether that be race related, whether that be a different ability related, whether that be gendered bias, whether that be aged bias, whether it be binary bias, whatever bias that is, that student, that client is going to feel it. And I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir here. However, there's been a lot of massage therapists that have been on the other side of the screen, like yourself, that said, I am not biased. And then we talk about some things and they go, I didn't think for one moment that I was. And then they think about it. And so I just had a few repeats come through after their license was up. And so we did a level 2 about a month ago, a couple of months ago. And that level 2 was also leveling up what they had already been working on between level 1 and level 2 implicit bias, which is really exciting. It was really exciting. We just updated the class and we didn't really repeat, but yet we went over everything in the initial class. And so we stayed within our regulation and was really impactful and elevated the conversation in a different way using that base teaching that they already had been incorporating into their practice. And so that impact that we bring in through being self-aware or being brought awareness to self-awareness can also impact workplace safety. And so with workplace safety, as you know, if somebody is continually experiencing microaggressions in their workplace, whether that be name your bias, whether it's a male massage therapists. I used to work with a male massage therapist in Manhattan Beach, California. And this male massage therapist, everybody thought that he was just the, bee's knees, and women would put makeup on before being massaged by him. And the people that were at the front would put a certain kind of woman um, to his in his book. He wouldn't get men, he would mostly get women, and that bias impacted him to a point where he no longer wanted to massage. So it's those little things that can build up in our industry that can affect our industry and the people in the industry in negative ways. Workplace safety within the education system, within our schools of education with massage therapy. If a student is continually microaggressed within their school, within their classroom, then that classroom no longer becomes a safe space, especially if they've addressed it and then a level of retaliation becomes something that makes them fear of speaking up, which impacts every job that they get afterwards. So the microaggressions continue in massage without accountability, at the detriment and at the expense of somebody that was told that those microaggressions don't exist. That person was well-meaning. That's not what they really meant. And now that massage therapist says, you know what, this industry is no longer safe. I'm gonna either go work for myself or they go out of the industry completely. So workplace safety is a huge, huge thing. Workplace safety with implicit bias also relates to the client and the therapist. So when the therapist touches a client and there is an element of implicit bias that is carrying in their bodies, maybe from a legacy of being raised in a family that carried those biases, that implanted those biases in the massage therapist. And the massage therapist has yet to unquestion, unchallenge, or unpack those biases and carry those biases into their clients and see somebody that challenges that bias. And that bias is going to come through their hands. And when it comes through their hands, that client is going to feel that bias and it's going to be very uncomfortable. I don't know how many of you have felt that static feeling. When you massage somebody, it's that static feeling. That bias can come up and it can be very uncomfortable, not only energetically, but physically. And it can cause a lot of harm, not only to the therapist, but to the client. And so when a therapist has the opportunity to unpack their implicit bias, they may not even know they carry, with the level of self-awareness can be aware of the energies that come up, the sensations that come up around implicit bias when a client comes into the room that challenges their bias, then that client nor the therapist is is put in a place where either can be harmed uh, or inflict harm, which allows for client security. So when a client feels secure, as we all know, when a client meets a massage therapist or a student meets a massage teacher, it takes 3 seconds for a person to decide if that therapist is the one that they will allow themselves to let go so that therapist can do their work. In layman's terms, it's a person has 3 seconds, within 3 seconds to decide if that massage therapist is going to facilitate their healing. This is a huge one. Because if a person is coming up and that massage therapist has their implicit biases challenged by the presence of another, then that person, that 3 seconds, it's out the window. It's instant. So when a person doesn't unpack their implicit bias, that happens in an instant. That client knows exactly what they're doing, who they're coming into, and is probably going to fall asleep in the first 3 seconds of the massage because they don't want to deal with it. So this client security be also is within retaining clients. And so when a massage therapist is unpacked implicit bias, is not self-aware of that bias, that client isn't going to come back. When a massage therapist is aware of their implicit bias, has unpacked the implicit bias, understands the implicit bias, is ready to confront that implicit bias, that can help with client retention because the client feels secure in your presence. Also with educators, educators feel secure, or the student feels secure to learn from the educator who has obviously unpacked their implicit bias. And in one way, an educator can express that they've unpacked their implicit bias is to catch it in the room when it's happening between students and then to correct that behavior. Another way that implicit bias is important in our industry is the legacy. So, as we know, there are massage therapists, famous massage therapists that are famous for implicit bias. Ida Rolf, did I say that? Did I say that? Ida Rolf? But Ida Rolf and is very famous for leading a charge with implicit bias and SLM. This is something that is not very well known, but well known. And one of the things that is impactful about that is that it makes that modality a little bit challenging for people who know what was behind that. And so the legacy that we can leave is to impact massage in a way that is not led by bias and to begin to rewrite the narrative, or get rid of the narrative altogether and write a whole new narrative about massage outside of an exclusion based um, a necessity for our humanity. So I've just talked for 26 minutes nonstop, and that's a lot of hearing myself talk. So I'm not used to that a lot. So pardon me. For a moment, I'm just going to take a deep breath, and I invite you all to take a deep breath with me. And maybe for a count of 4. All right. So another aspect of implicit bias and the importance of implicit bias. Thank you very much for breathing with me, those that you did. Um, really appreciate that. Another important part of including implicit bias in your education program and also in your practice are the essence of grace. So many times this topic can be very reactionary. And when a person is on the receiving end of implicit bias, it can be very reactionary. When a person is called on their behavior based in implicit bias, it can be very reactionary. So, one of the tools that we provide in implicit bias training is to navigate implicit bias from a place of forgiveness and grace. It's not their fault that they were raised by parents that had implicit biases, who had parents that had implicit biases, who had parents that had implicit biases. It is their responsibility to challenge those. But does everybody want to do that? No. How do we navigate that in our classrooms? How do we navigate that in our workplaces? And how do we reduce the amount of harm that implicit bias can present in a space that's supposed to be healing forward? And that's where that forgiveness and grace comes in. It allows for a level of compassion, for having the fear to let go of those implicit biases. For some, those biases are a part of who they are. It's their family legacy and it's their family heritage. And I'm not excusing it. I'm not justifying it. I'm not saying that it's okay. Allowing the opportunity to recognize it outside of a reactionary place. And having implicit bias training can allow for that grace. Because when I see somebody engaging in implicit bias and I react to that, I'm the one that's being harmed. I'm harming myself, as well as having that harm placed on me. And so, with the tools in this class that we explore, we reduce the amount of harm that implicit bias can impact um, in our massage rooms and in our classrooms. And so, also by leading with the example, going back to implicit bias training for educators in the room, by bringing in implicit bias examples into the room, uh, can teach your students in the room the importance of standing up to injustice, whether it be in the workplace from a client or in their general life. Being that example uh, is is an empowering thing for an educator to do, as witnessed by a student. They take that, they learn everything. as everybody, I don't know how many people in here have had interactions with the under 25 crowd. And I had the room of 30 of them today, and they were just, I mean, this next generation that's coming up has had it with injustice and is tearing down the walls to figure out how to navigate the world of injustice and a world of systemic harm, and tear it down, and not do it in a reactive way. And they're hungry for it. And it's just amazing. And I was like, my heart, my little Gen X heart was like, "Oh, the babies are so beautiful." So, it was a real honor to be in that space today, and get a insight into the generation that's coming in. All right, so that's it for me. I'm gonna stop talking about myself. I would like to address some of the things in the chat, and then let's go to Q&A.
Yes, and thank you very much, Tanya. Chris is asking, do you have a book? And the second question is, sell your curriculum to educators? Question mark. So, do you have a book? How do you reach
Oh,
educators and turn them on to your teachings?
yeah, I don't have a book. However, I can what I do for whole classrooms is I get zoomed into the room. And so I have a few classrooms where I'll get zoomed into the room. We'll explore the subject. It gets really spicy because I'm on a little, box on the screen that they interact with. And so they get bold, which can be a lot of fun. And so that's typically how I navigate around showing up in classrooms with this information. Um, Bringing this information to uh, a a class that may not have an instructor that is implicit bias aware themselves can cause a little harm from what I've seen. And so part of this class and how it's so important is me and what I bring into this space, and how I can navigate this space, and how I can bring people in it. So, if you would like, what we can do is, Chris, you and I can have a conversation about what that looks like for your class, and um, and then we can figure out how we can bring implicit bias training into your school, or educators that you might know or can
Yes,
recommend uh, or see this class benefiting.
thank you for that. And for those of you who have not attended an EduTalk previously, tomorrow, please watch your inbox for a follow-up email, which will include Tanya's recording tonight of her EduTalk, as well as it will include her contact information so that you can reach out to her directly and explore that option further. So let's move back a second to the 3-second connect, which almost sounds like 3 seconds to judge. And do you have any quick tips in that short span of time where someone needs to do a self-check? Like they're feeling this way about the client, and how in that 3 seconds do you turn it around?
Yeah, absolutely. Where did that come from? Where did that thought come from?
I was just thinking
But
that.
that's the tip.
Oh, I thought you were asking me. Oh, that's so funny. Okay.
That's the tip. Where did that thought come from?
That's
Whose narrative is it? And I see you, Leanne. Whose narrative is it? How am I subscribing to this and how will it benefit me now? Those things, those three questions, can snap a person out of that process. And then obviously with the breath, wow, where did that come from? And then breathe and then be here now. And so what that does is it helps to challenge in the moment that thought process of implicit bias. Implicit bias is, since it lives behind the brain, it's constantly looking for stuff to confirm itself. And so when a person walks in, and if that person isn't confirming that implicit bias is going to come back to the front of the brain, but you can send it right back to the back of the brain and go, where did that come from? All right, I'll deal with you later. I need to be here now for this client. And then focus in on the breath. Maybe even get into that breath connection with you and the client. And so then you two are breathing together, and then no longer is the focus in on that thought bubble that comes through. There's a comment in here that I'd like to address that talks about everyone has implicit bias. And implicit bias doesn't just come from our upbringing, it comes from TV and schools and news, and is a cultural thing. And that's a yes and, right? That's a yes and, because, and we got into this conversation today, which was really great. So everybody has implicit bias, and thank you for bringing that in. Everybody has implicit bias, yes. There's something that is taught with implicit bias that's inherently wrong with them, and I'm just going to flat out say it. It is a disservice to people to teach implicit bias is the same thing as opinion. Implicit bias and opinion are two very different things. So a person can change their opinion about something, right? However, implicit bias is something that is brought in. It's practically hardwired into the brain. So from a very, very early age. And so we were talking about what that looks like. And the example that we used today was with a person who takes care of their baby, a baby, they're walking down the street and they see somebody that looks different from them. And the person reaches over and goes, oh, look, that's a beautiful baby. And the person who's taking care of that baby jolts the pram back, or the stroller, or whatever, however you call it. That baby is going to feel that recoil and associate that person with that recoil response. And so through their life, they see the person who takes care of them have that recoil response whenever somebody may be getting close to that baby, throughout their upbringing. This is reinforced by media, TV, schools, news, and culture, which is very different from an opinion. My opinion, Doritos are the best chips to eat, right? Until I try these other chips and I go, oh no, in my opinion, these other chips are the best to eat. Not the same with implicit bias. And so often I hear implicit bias and opinion, right? I could like something and you could not like something. That means that you're biased. No, that's an opinion. Implicit bias is a reaction, a visceral, a psychological, or energetic reaction to a person, place, or thing that is deemed the other, different, or something that is based in an upbringing that is consistently reinforced through TV, schools, news, culture, books, and films. So that's a yes and I'm really, really glad that you brought that up, because it was a huge topic of conversation today, and it seems like it's one of those things that people tend to miss the mark on with regards to implicit bias, is associate implicit bias with opinion, and they have nothing to do with each other. So thank you for bringing that in.
A good point. Everyone, we have another minute or two to continue to ask Tanya questions or share a comment about your experience with implicit bias in your practice or through school. I'm not sure how schools address implicit bias and is it something that is part of every school training? And Tanya, I don't know if you know that, if it is part of the curriculum or where things might stand on that.
Right. I don't know any massage schools that have an implicit bias class built into their curriculum. Um, However, there are states that have implicit bias built into relicensure. So I believe it's Washington State, Illinois, and Michigan have implicit bias built into their massage relicensure process. So uh, that's where this class is comes in, because it's just as we know, there's a level of implicit bias in healthcare that is literally life or death. And so oh, that's cool. That's cool. Jennifer just put in, we have a course called Sociology of Diversity, and they made it part of their program. It's really, really great. One of the things that we experience in um, implicit bias, especially with massage therapy, is that implicit bias doesn't necessarily have to be race-based either. It can be gender-based. It can be um, from the industry itself. There was I don't know how many of you in here have been massaging for quite some time. I could remember in 2005, I went into a physical therapist office, and it was before massage had been accepted fully by the medical industry. And I was told to go back to the spa because medical fraternity physical therapists don't have massage in their offices. And that was yeah, Washington, DC and Maryland. Yeah, absolutely. And I believe New Jersey too. If I may be, I don't know. I don't know. I got to check into that. But thank you for that. DC and Maryland. That's awesome. And so that level of bias against massage therapy was my first foray into implicit bias within our industry from the medical fraternity. So implicit bias within massage is, comes in various forms, and it's not just race-based. So that's an important thing to bring in and teach out as well. So yeah.
Well, very good. It definitely sounds like check yourself first. Check yourself. I would like to mention the upcoming Edu Talks that we have scheduled for September, and please watch your inbox for invitations. On September 10th, we have Carrie D'Ambrosia, who has previously presented for Edu Talks, and you can see his past presentations in the Edu Talk archive library on biotone.com under the Edu Talk tab. He will be introducing energetic balancing on September 17th. And for those of you that aren't aware, that we also have an Edu Talk series, diabetes series. You might want to tune in or visit the archive library on ez.com or biotone.com for the Edu Talk diabetes series. Linda Lockett Brown on the 17th of September, we'll be presenting dietary supplements and diabetes, what works, what doesn't, and what's potentially harmful. And September 24th, we close out September with Peter Coppola. He will be presenting Introduction to Visceral Manipulation. So keep an eye on your inboxes for upcoming EduTalks, as well as tomorrow. If you do not see a follow-up email in your inbox, please check your junk or your spam folder for the recording and Tanya's contact information follow-up. And thank you so much. It looks like we don't have any additional questions. Tanya, thank you for sharing this and bringing awareness to how we might approach others, and also drilling down on where is it coming from. So I appreciate that and the work you do. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you all for what you do. Visit the archive libraries. Both are actually on biotone.com under the EduTalk tab. So thank you, everyone. Be well, and we'll see you next time. Take care.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Bye-bye.